On this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, we're joined by an awesome guest. He's a writer, director, producer, and actor. It's Elias Toufexis. There we go. See, you did a bit of voice directing there, sir. I know that you do it as part of your job as well, but you had your work cut out for me. But welcome to the show, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on. The man of many talents that has been in so many things. I would be here all week trying to read through your IMDb. But before we jump into your awesome career and what you've been working on and a few things that is coming in the future, what interests me is that obviously your job and you know, it's all dependent on work and things going smoothly. So with the pandemic that happened a little while ago, and I know there's a massive knock-on effect still with that, you know, how did that affect you as a working actor and a voice actor? And how did you keep positive and moving forwards during those times of the pandemic?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually pretty similar in the sense as what's going on now with the strike, with the writer's strike and the probably soon to be actor strike, is that you start going, okay, I'm okay right now, but if this continues, what am I going to do? That's what most actors were going through in the pandemic, especially on screen. Like 50% of my career is on screen versus voiceover. And man, when the pandemic hit and we started shutting down, and I'm not the only one, I started losing jobs just left and right. I was supposed to go up to shoot a show in Montreal. That never happened. I was supposed to go up to Montreal. No, I was supposed to go up to Montreal to do Phoenix Rising performance capture for Ubisoft. That never happened. And then I was supposed to go to Toronto to do a show. That never happened. And I was really getting frightened. And all of my friends who were on screen actors only, they were getting really scared. And because everything shut down, of course, as everybody knows. And then what happened with me and with a lot of voice actors was we said, all right, let's take a little bit of money and build ourselves this booth professionally so that we have at least the ability to record from home in as much of a professional sounding way as possible. So I decided to spend some cash. It wasn't that much, but it was a good chunk, and built this thing. And then voice work started coming back. And then a lot of people who were nervous about bringing actors up places, they would just, a great example is that Phoenix Rising thing. We had done a bunch of performance capture for it. The pandemic hit, so we couldn't finish it. So they said, we're going to use what we have and we're going to animate the rest. And you just do everything from your sound booth. So I was able to finish a game from here. And then more and more work came along, because at the beginning, there were only a few of us actors who had a professional booth from their house. Now everybody has it, because after the first year of COVID, it was just, if you want to work, do this. That just lifted. What are we, the 27th? It just lifted like 10 days ago with ACTRA going into places.
Wow.
So only 10 days ago, but before 10 days ago, it was still like, can you work from home? If you can work from home, that's better, because you have to go through all these protocols if you can't. So that's really the only thing the two things that changed for me was all my on-camera stuff stopped. And then we all went into a panic. And then we decided, okay, well, at least I can push the voiceover stuff, and built this booth. And I mean, I didn't build it, I bought it. I bought it and built it. And then I worked from there pretty steadily after that. And then it's not that anything got better, but the unions got better at dealing with on-set work. So like when I went up and did Star Trek, we were still kind of it was last year, so we were like coming out of it, but still in the midst of the rules. And I would test every other day, and we all wore masks all day even through rehearsal, until after rehearsal. And then only for shooting would we take the masks off. And that was the same thing on any show I did last year and the year before. And then everything started kind of coming back together, and everyone was happy. And then 2 months ago the writer's strike, or a month ago the writer's strike. So
I
it's all
mean,
back to like,
I mean, I was going to mention the writers' strike towards the end of the interview, but as you're speaking about it now, I've got an awesome picture of you supporting with the
oh yeah,
wonderful team there,
our Star Trek.
the Star Trek team. So in a nutshell, what has caused this writers' strike from your side of things? Because I would like to educate everyone like exactly what it's about, so we can help
Sure, I can
support
give the
even though
nutshell
we're not
version.
writers ourselves.
Yeah. So let me just preface it by saying, like, a lot of people think that if you live in LA, if you live here and you're a writer, um, by the way, I am a writer, but I'm not a member of the union. The show that I'm working on is non-union, so I'm there just as support and solidarity. I'm not striking, but I will when the actors go on strike, if that happens. But in a nutshell, you don't make a whole bunch of money as a writer or an actor in if you spread it out over a year, right? So like a writer friend of mine wrote on a show. She gets 10 episodes to write, so it's probably 3 months. She gets paid okay, and then that goes away. And once it's done, so 3 months you get paid okay. You can't living in LA. You can't stretch out 3 months
Mm-hmm.
pay to live here. It's preposterously overpriced. Um, and usually, what would happen was on a show that you did, like I'll give you an example. As an actor, it's the same thing for a writer, but as an actor, on a show like FBI, I've done a episode of FBI's Most Wanted or Criminal Minds or whatever. I've done a bunch of those shows, right? So for Criminal Minds, because it's on a network, I get paid for the shoot, and then every time it's sold to another part of the world, I get a little bit of money. Sometimes it's like the fee again because it's a big sale. Sometimes it's like $30,
Mm.
but the money kind of trickles in no matter what, the residuals. So the big deal is for writers and actors is what happened was networks started streaming and like places like Netflix, Disney Plus, and now Paramount, and Paramount is what CBS is under. So if you're on a CBS show that only streams, no more residuals for you because they don't sell it to anywhere else. They
Mm.
go, well, we just put it on our platform. It's accessible to the whole world. So we're not selling it anywhere else. So we don't make any more money from it. So you're not going to make any more money from it. Which on the surface, okay, maybe that makes sense, but you're making so much more money because you're getting subscriptions from all over the world,
Yeah.
right? So the actors and the writers, but the writers are on strike specifically because they say, well, look, we used to live off of these residuals, and now you're killing us, and you're making us work just as hard, and then you're not giving us any residuals. So when a writer finishes a job that's 2 months, and while they're trying to get another job, they usually live off of those residuals,
Mm.
but those residuals are going away. So in some cases, they don't get them at all. So that's the big one. Then the other one was they're doing what they usually do with network shows is they get about 12 writers in a room for a show. And what they're starting to do is they're starting to go, well, if we're going to break down a show, we're not going to use the 12 writers anymore. We're going to use 3. And we're only going to pay 3. So, that's 9 writers that are like, I used to be able to get work, and now they're cutting down what is the norm. So there's that. And then there's AI, which is a big issue. We
Mm.
want both actors and writers just want the studios to say we're not going to use AI, or at least before we do, we have to talk to writers and actors, and there's all sorts of demands. You can find it on the WGA website, and they're not overwhelmingly large demands. They all make sense. They're not asking for a fortune, but I don't remember the numbers, so forgive me for the estimation, but it's something like if you gave every writer a 1% raise or back end on residuals or something, it would cost like every writer in LA, it would cost like $200 million. And I think they just chose Warner Brothers or something, which had a profit of like $1 billion.
Mm.
So you look at it and go, well, a little bit out of your profit and keep the writers living, and that's what they want. And the actor strike is going to be the same thing. We don't AI residuals, and especially residuals. Like I'll do a Netflix show and not see a dime after, but I'll do a network show and I'm never going to see another dime from Star Trek because it's a streaming show. But from I'll make money off of CSI or FBI appearances for years. But even that money has diminished a lot from what I heard because I came down from Canada where we don't get residuals at all. It's a nightmare. But but that money, the residuals have already kind of dropped precipitously already before streaming. So it's a lot of stuff. And if everybody strikes, it's going to shut down the business. But I feel like it might get resolved quicker if everybody strikes as opposed to just the writers.
Yeah, because I was going to ask what you felt would be the sort of knock-on effect that if everyone striked, how it would affect it, because there was a writer's strike quite a few years ago, if I remember rightly,
2008,
and that did actually
2007 or 8.
affect it affected a lot of productions, and rightly so, because writers are important. Every part of that machine is important. And I feel like the streaming platforms at the moment, with the cancellation culture as well, it's just they're looking at it as a business and trying to make as much profit as possible. But I think that if they're not careful, the quality is going to get affected, and the viewers
It's already getting affected.
are going
I
to
know what
see.
you're saying.
Yeah,
I know exactly what
yeah.
you're saying. Yeah. And also, it did I mean, I think the best example that I read of it was what's the second James Bond movie? Quantum of Solace. Craig has talked about that hit right after the writer's strike, but they had already kind of ramped up production, so they didn't want to stop, and they couldn't legally use writers, or it would be like breaking the line, and so the movie was just like a mess all over. And Craig has said that specifically. It's not just my opinion. Like Daniel Craig said, Quantum of Solace was a mess, and it was because we didn't have the writers. And so that's one effect from it. And the other one is everything shuts down. And if you look at the lineup, I don't remember who released it, but I think it was ABC or something, the lineup for the fall, it's all crappy reality shows. Like nobody likes, I mean, a lot of people watch it apparently, but they have a bunch of reality shows, and they have a bunch of, they don't really have they do have writers, but they're mostly non-union writers. And so it's going to be a lot of reality shows for a while. And I just read, my friend of mine is producing the Blade Runner show that's coming out. And I just read that, I haven't asked him about this yet, but I just read that the Blade Runner show is going to be postponed now indefinitely until, indefinitely sounds like forever. It's not indefinite, but it's until the strike is resolved.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of shows that are due to be renewed as well is obviously, delayed. I mean, one of my favorite shows at the moment is Superman and Lois. I just think it's fantastic. It's so well written.
Yeah.
The storyline, I just think is fantastic.
I really like him as Superman too.
Yeah, he is. But to meet him in person, he's tiny. He's tiny. I mean, I'm 6'2".
Is he?
and Christopher Reeve, who will always be my Superman, was like 6'4". But he plays an amazing Superman. He really does. And that is waiting to be either cancelled by the current CW and maybe going on to HBO Max. But it's all delayed at the moment, and I think fans are on the edge. But let's go back to right at the beginning and explore what actually got you into this industry, which I've got to say is one of the most competitive industries to get into. I mean, what inspired you to enter the world of entertainment?
I mean, I can tell you two things, right? The two different things that happened to me. One was, I saw Star Wars. I saw Indiana Jones. I saw these movies when I was a kid. And for me, I was just like, I just want to be, I didn't really know what it meant. I was like, I just want to be that. I want to be Luke. I want to be Indy. I didn't really, I'm sure every kid thought the same thing. But for me, I was like, can I do this as a living? I don't really know. But I didn't really care. It was just like, I wanted to be in the movies. And then what happened was, I was at my uncle's house, and he had on Kenneth Branagh's Henry V. And I was like enthralled with that movie. He had it like, I don't know if it was on TV or if he had it on VHS at the time. But I was like completely enthralled with the movie. I didn't know what was going on, but I was like, what is this? And that made me look up Kenneth Branagh, specifically Kenneth Branagh. And then which kind of in turn made me look up theater and look up Shakespeare. And now it's like a huge love of mine, particularly Shakespeare. And my favorite author by far. And that made me go to theater school. Instead of just trying to be in the movies, I learned about what it was to be an actor, or that's what I wanted to do. I learned about what it was to be an actor and stage acting, and I thought was the best way for me to be in it. And in terms of like, you know, nobody told me that it was hard. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me like I didn't. I nobody. One thing about theater school that I wish they would change. Maybe they've changed it now. Is like they should have a class where it says this is the reality of the business
Mm.
because it's really difficult and you have to learn about taxes and agents and auditioning specifically for type like a million things you have to learn, and you don't learn any of that. You just learn about the actor's process. So when I graduated from theater school, there was just no other option for me. It was just always that's what I was going to do. I was just always going to be an actor. Um, and it was funny because I have a friend of mine who always called me "No Plan B, Elias," because I never had a second plan. I never like had a backup career. It was just like I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And it was when I realized that I'm good at it though. Like I love, like I love hockey. I'm a big hockey fan. I love Broadway musicals. I'm a big Broadway musical fan. But I would never, no matter how much training I had, I would never be good enough to do those things at the top level.
Mm.
Uh, so I would have had a plan B if, like, I, for example, wanted to be a hockey player. I would have been like, okay, I love it. Maybe I'll fluke it out. But with acting, it was like, I know I'm good. I know I can do this. Everybody I work with tells me, tells me how good I am. Goes out of their way to tell me. So it's not like. I don't mean this now. I mean this when I was trying to decide what to do at the time. Everyone I worked with would say, "You're good. You're good. You're good." And it wasn't like they would actively seek me out and say, like, "You're really good." So I was like, okay, well, if I am really good, then this is what I'm going to do. And there was never anything else for me. And really, the reason I got into uh, writing, like I sold an animated series that I wrote, and the reason I even got into writing, and that was just one of the like 50 things that I wrote, was because I'm like, I just want to play this part. Like it wasn't really like I want to be a writer. It was, well, I'm never going to get to play this, so I want to play this. And so I would write things that I want to play. Um, and directing is just something that's I only do voice directing, so it's because I know so much about working in animation and working in video games as a voice actor that when people ask me for help, I just go, well, why don't I just direct it? And that kind of only started in the last 5 years or so. But anyway, to come back to long-windedly answer your question, um, I when I saw Henry V, coupled with my love of movies, which I still have, that was for me just like that's it. That's what I'm doing, and then I just followed it from there. And I lived in Montreal until I got a movie that gave me enough money to move to Vancouver because I knew they were shooting a lot of stuff there. Then I moved to Toronto because I was doing some work there, and then I came down here to LA.
Do you know what? It's really refreshing to hear you talk about obviously loving Shakespeare and go in that direction because that is very an English way
Oh, I know.
of it
Yeah.
because I did training. I went to university for performing arts, for acting, etc. And we learned about obviously Shakespeare, Chekhov, Stanislavski, all of those. And for yourself, obviously when you actually started working, how much of that training do you think that you put into place, in the real world? Because I found that when I started doing TV over here, it just felt like literally nothing that I could relate to. It was like starting afresh. It was just really strange.
It's tough because that's why I think a lot of actors go back to theater
Hmm.
even if it doesn't pay anything. I haven't done a stage play in, man, like 7 or 8 years, maybe even longer, and I miss it. I really miss it, but it's so expensive to live pretty much anywhere now. I was going to say LA, but it's getting expensive to live everywhere. So, I can't. You can't work for no money in theater anymore, like I did when I was younger. I have 2 kids. I have car payments, house payments. So it's like I miss those days a lot. And the reason I miss them is exactly what you're saying. Is I don't really ever use, unless it's unconscious
Mm.
through experience. I don't really use like the training I've had. Like I don't really break down on some things. It's not exactly true. Like like a rarity comes along, like a show like The Expanse, which is really well written and layered, and I could build a character. You know, or this Star Trek character that I play now. He has layers and he has things that mean something to him, and you could play that, and that kind of falls back on your training. But look, man, I did an episode of, and this is not to disparage these shows. These shows are important, and I will do them till the day I die. But I did like an episode of FBI last year, and I played the bad guy of the week. And I swear to God, I could have taken that character and put him in the Criminal Minds episode that I did 2 months prior, and there'd be no real difference. You know what I mean? It's just like
Mm.
that's the character. This is a show that is written like a machine,
Mm.
right? And so I really I could do those roles in my sleep now. I break them down maybe like before I go on set in my trailer, but for the most part, I'm just like, don't. I know what this is. I know what this is. I know what they're trying to get. As opposed to when I get something that's meaty, I'll dig into it. And what's really interesting is video games are more interesting for character stuff these days than TV for the most part, at least for
Mm.
what I've been offered. Like I'll take a Adam Jensen in Deus Ex, who's a multi-layered character, or like there's a game I'm doing now that I just finished. I can't talk about it yet, but you'll know when it comes out in a few months. Like this character's like layered and beautiful and has a daughter, and there's all this like stuff with his daughter, and it's great. It's just great. And I'm like, oh man, I don't really get to play these like really good characters on TV for the most part. So again, I like to really long-windedly answer your questions,
It's
but
okay.
uh, I don't really fall back on the training unless it's something really, really meaty. Maybe this is just my own issue that I should work on, but like a lot of TV stuff, like you said, a lot of TV stuff, man, you're there for the day. You don't have any rehearsal. You don't know anybody. You're there for the week. I mean, you come in, you're like the person of the week. You do your job. They just want you to hit your mark and say your lines. I don't think I got a piece of direction on like Criminal Minds. I don't think anybody said anything to me other than just stand here. And they cast me because they know I could do it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like they know I could do it. They saw the audition. They saw my demo. They're like, yeah, this guy's not going to be a problem. We have a million things to think about. Just do your job. And so it's up to me to build that character things in there. And hopefully I do it. But I really don't like dig into the training, like you were saying,
Mm.
because it's very it's not the same medium, TV
Mm.
and theater anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit like learning to be a mechanic, from the page. But then when you get your hands on a car, it's a whole different experience altogether.
Yeah,
And it's quite interesting that you mentioned about the games and obviously the characters. I mean, games now are literally movies. They are, just concentrated on the story, which we're going to talk about shortly. But how do you choose your roles? What do your roles that you take? What do they have to make you get excited about them?
well, that's two different questions. Like to make me get excited about them, that's one thing. Choosing my roles, I'll just take it to get paid. That's like I'm a working actor, right? So a lot of times I'll be like, "Yep, I'll do it," and it's like a CSI or something. I like them and they're fun, but I'm not really going like I hope I do this every day. You know what I mean? That's not what gets me excited. I'm talking myself out of jobs here, uh, but getting excited about something like like I got really excited about Star Trek, And the reason I did, it doesn't air till next year, but the reason I did get excited was because, well, first of all, I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I was happy to be on the show, and it's a really big role, so it's like the whole season. That's also so monetarily that's good, but also I'm like, oh, it's like actual character, like it's not just a guy who's like he's the bad guy kind of, but it's not just like I'm evil, I want revenge. It's like they build a whole. There's like 2 episodes where it's just going into why my character is doing what he's doing, and that's great. So I got really excited about that.
So, would you like to take home a piece of film history or TV history into your own home? Find your own piece of magic with Prop Store, the world's leading auctioneers of film props, costumes, and more. So, check out propstore.com or follow the link in the description of this video. And while you're doing that, why don't you use our special code? Our special code will give you 10% off anything in the Buy Now section. And the code is easy to remember. It's Brian10. That's BRYAN 10, and it's just above the finger, just here. Use that at the checkout to get your 10% off. That's propstore.com.
So good writing will get me excited. I have turned down things like just auditions. I turned down an audition the other day for what was it? It was like a priest in a pretty big movie, and it would have been like not a huge role, but a pretty good role. But the priest was like a pedophile or something like that, and it was really creepy. And I had to like do creepy things. I'm like, I don't even want to audition for this. I like money and I like doing work, but I don't like this. I don't want to do that. And I've started to turn down roles that, like for example, I had an audition a few months ago now, for an outwardly gay guy, and I was like, if I do this, it's almost like this straight guy's putting on a facade,
Mm.
and I'm like, I'm gonna stretch into mockery, or instead of like being, I don't mind playing anybody if he's gay, if it's not the point of his character, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like if the point of his character is something else, but he happens to be gay, I have no problem playing that. But if the point of him is he's gay, first of all, it was badly written. Second of all, I was like, oh, I have to be like this, like overly played gay. I'm like, I'm just gonna be a parody. So I turned that down. So those type of things are happening with me as I get older and as I get more of a confidence in my career where I can say no to things. But more often than not, I don't say no. More often than not, I'm just like, yeah, you gonna pay me? Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna. Well, I am gonna ask as well, because obviously you are a dad. I mean, has your approach to your career changed since having kids? Because it's got to put a bit more pressure on you, especially the style of industry that you're in. Having kids now.
I wonder. I mean, it certainly has changed me as an actor for the better, because it just opens up. This is a cliche, but it opens up parts of you that you hadn't had access to before, like feelings that I'm like, oh, I never felt that like I do, in terms of like the protection I feel for my kids or the love I feel for my daughter, like things like that. They're new feelings. So new feelings for an actor are great. So there's that. But quite frankly, like I consider myself a working actor. So I'm like an actor's actor. I go from one show to another show, to a game, to an animated series, to I wish to a play, but that hasn't happened in a while. And then go and do another show or whatever. So for me, it's like I go, well, I need this much money every month to pay my expensive bills. My daughter has braces this month coming up. That's like $2,000 US. I got to cover that. So those type of things, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true, man. You got to think about all this extra stuff. If I often think, like, what if it was just me? I'd be living in some like 1-bedroom apartment under the Hollywood sign. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't need anything. But when you have kids and you have a family, it's like everything gets predominantly more expensive, but it also opens you up a lot more as a as a person. So there's pluses and minuses. I wouldn't have it any other way, but it is most definitely. I'll be like, here's the other thing: is you live in the UK, I come from Canada. We've never had to worry about healthcare.
Mm.
Living down here, you have to worry about healthcare. So I have to hit a certain number as an actor every year of dollars made. And if I don't hit that number, my family doesn't have healthcare. Or I have to buy healthcare, which is preposterously expensive for a family of four. You're talking thousands of extra dollars a month for a family of four just to have healthcare. So recently, with the strike happening, I've been sending emails out to producers and stuff going, look, when this thing ends, I need to hit this number. So give me days of work. Like, I need days of work. I'll come in and do, the guy who yells grenade and 20 times or whatever, which I normally wouldn't do because I don't need it. But now it's like, well, I need healthcare for my kids. And again, if I was living on my own, I'd be like, healthcare, whatever, I'll figure it out. Those type of things are what change you as a working day actor. I like to look at actors as like construction workers. I tend not to look at them as artists. Maybe that's a me thing, but I look at them more like craftsmen. Like you hire me to build a part of your story and tell it properly. That's why you hire me. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. But the reason I look at them as like construction workers is because I go from one job, that job ends, and I need another job. And then that job ends and I need another job. So actually, to be quite frank with you, the directing and mostly the directing is a very good thing for an actor to be able to do, an actor like me, because on those days, like I finished Star Trek February, came back here, did Blood of Zeus, which is a Netflix show that I did. I did a week of recording for that, March. Then the writer's strike started happening, and I haven't had a acting job since. So I would be normally really panicked not having a job in almost 3 months now, but I voice direct. So that covers me monetarily, but voice directing doesn't count towards my healthcare. So it's a really, it's a dance, man. Remember at the beginning when you were saying, like, how did you know you were getting into this, like, really difficult industry? You don't. Only when you're in it do you realize how freaking hard it is.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the healthcare system. I mean, we're very lucky in the UK. And I was only explaining the other night to my wife. We was watching a Netflix show called Emergency New York City, and I was explaining that the fact that these operations and the reason why they've got these helicopters and these amazing ambulances and everything like that is all because of insurance companies. It's all because it is a business. At the end of the day, they make billions off.
There's an ambulance company that goes around here in my neighborhood, and I'm so used to growing up in Canada where the ambulance belongs to the hospital. But the ambulances here say McCormick on the back of them because it's a company that owns the ambulances. Yeah, it's not the hospital's ambulance. And you got to pay the company if you need an ambulance.
And like if they go to a call and they take a patient in, then they get paid. And like that company, it's like a sales thing. I just think it's ridiculous. Absurd. I really do. So I want to just quickly touch on one of my all-time favorite shows of all time, and it will always stay with me. I've interviewed quite a few of the cast from this show, and the show I'm talking about, let me just bring up a poster of it, is the awesome The Expanse. Okay, this has got to be, to date, probably it is the best sci-fi series to hit our screens. I mean, how precise it's been written, how it's been filmed, the acting and everything like that. I just think it's fantastic. And I'm right in saying as well that your character of Kenzo wasn't actually in the book. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
So how did you get the actual role on the show?
It's actually a cool story because so in the books there's a lot of Steve's character, there's a lot of inner monologuing, right? So you can't really do inner monologuing unless you're going to do a narration over, but it doesn't really work. So they needed basically a character like Kenzo to get these characters to this next place. So what happened was, this is all true. I auditioned for it. I auditioned for Amos, and I got a call back and got another call back. And then apparently it came down to me and Wes to get the role for Amos. And I swear to God, I'm not just saying this. I was actually just telling Mark Fergus this, one of the writers, the other day. It was the first time in my career where I didn't get a role, and then I saw who got it, and I went, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Like, most of the time, I'm like, "These guys are idiots. They cast the wrong. Like, I would have killed it. This guy sucks." But with Wes, I was like, "Oh yeah. He's perfect for Amos. I get why they went his way." And then what had happened was, so I didn't get Amos. I was really disappointed. Then they called me and they're like, "We're gonna put you on hold for this character named Havelock that Jay played." I don't remember Jay's last name. Remember it was Thomas Jane's partner. He gets stabbed at one point in the first
Yeah.
season. Yeah. And I got put on hold for that and then didn't get that. And I was like, "Oh, whatever. I'm never going to get on this damn show." At this point, we only knew it was going to be one season. So then they called me and they said, "Okay, we wrote you a character. We needed a character to get these guys here. So we wrote Kenzo for you." And he was only supposed to be in one episode. And these guys liked my work. So we did one episode. And by the time I'd finished the 2 weeks of that one episode, they're like, "Oh, you're going to come back for the next one and the next one. And then one more." I was like, "Oh, great. And that's how that came about. And then, because, I mean, spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, you should watch it. It's a great show. But Kenzo gets moleculed. He gets eaten by the end of the episode, by the end of the season. And then they knew that because of my experience with performance capture in video games, motion capture, performance capture in video games, they knew I could do that. So they called me and said, "Do you want to come in and play these 9 foot tall proto-molecule creatures?" And I went in and, yeah, that guy. I went in. That is not me, though. That's the design. But yeah, that guy. And I went in and played that guy for a few episodes and then a couple of episodes in season 3. Yeah.
It's just
So I
awesome.
maintain a relationship.
I mean, the cast and everything like that, it must have been incredible to work on, the sets and everything like that. I mean, obviously, Wes, I've had on the show, I've had Show Ray, I've had Nadine, I've had Thomas Jane. I mean, what was it like working on the set? Have you got any funny stories of any days on set that you can share that won't get you into trouble?
I mean, it was really fun. I really like Wes. I actually just talked to him a few days ago. Wes and I are still friendly. Um, Steve is great, real pro. Dom is super sweet. Cass I knew for years because we're both from Montreal. And Tom I didn't really work with that much. I talked to him off set a few times. He's a really nice guy. And Shore I talked to a bunch because we both have gravelly video game voices. So we talked about that. But on set it was fun, man. There were long hours and stuff like that. It was fun when I was doing the protomolecule because I came to set to hang out with them to play the creature on set before we went off to a performance capture stage to shoot it, which was really a lot of fun to do because I had to act like I'm 9 feet tall, and so give them the eye line and give them scary moves so they can react to it. And then we went off to a performance capture stage and we reshot everything. The really interesting thing about that, this is I always found fascinating, was the set was the set. So I would show up on the set and we'd block out the scenes. And then because the creature is 9 feet tall, when we went to the volume, which is where you do the performance capture, the set was mathematically shrinked. So a box that was normally 6 feet tall was like 2. Because I had to be the right size. So I'm on the Rocinante, but it's like a mini Rocinante, or like a half a Rocinante, or 2/3 thirds or whatever. So that was really fun. Um, the one story I like telling um, about The Expanse was an actor I admire and I've admired for years is Jared Harris and his dad, Richard Harris. I've admired them both as actors. So he's on the show, and he kind of left the show right when I came on in that first season. So they gave me his trailer. So one day I'm, looking at my script, and my script is like I don't write things down on my script. I just look at it and I get it in my head, and then I memorize it. Memorizing is the most important thing for me. I memorized it, and then I would just go to set and talk about it. But I'm sitting in the trailer, and I open the drawer, and there's Jared's script from the previous episode, and every word, every line is written. There's like a mark, a note, like literally like a number, a circle, and then at the bottom there's a note. And I'm like, oh, this is the theater guy. This is the breakdown, the script theater guy. I always found that really funny. I'm like, we're both from theater, but we have different, like very different ways of looking at a script. And I was like, should I be doing this? And then I realized my process works fine, but his process is amazing. It's just, it was so detailed. I should have kept it. I just felt bad. I'm like, I shouldn't be looking at this. This is like an actor's private thing. But
He's gone. It's fine. It's fine. You should have kept it.
Yeah, I should have kept it. Yeah.
But
I really just felt like put it away. It said, this is Jared's thing. But it was great to see like just so many like copious notes on his script. It's so cool.
I mean, I wanted to move on to your voice work because your voice work is so impressive, and you've lent your vocal talents to so many amazing titles, from Assassin's Creed to Gotham Knights as the Penguin, which I think is awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, what does it take to become a successful voice actor?
Persistence and yeah, it's an interesting question. It's like, because there's two types, right? There's like voice actors that can just do, like I just did a game that just came out the other day, the Star Trek Resurgence game that came out, right? And I play the bad guy in it, and they hired me for my bad guy. Yeah, that guy, my bad guy voice, right? So they hired me to sound like this and be my normal, like I try to really give a good, true performance, but this is the voice they hired. But then there's this guy, I don't know how to say his name properly, it's Piotr, it's probably Peter or Piotr, who does Leonard Nimoy impression as Spock. And it's incredible. Like his Leonard Nimoy is incredible. And then you go look him up and every voice he does is completely different. And I do that, but not to that degree. So I kind of in my mind separated, like there's the actors who play the million different characters, and then the voice actors who get hired because they're good at what they do with, this circle. That's at least how I get hired. I get hired in this circle. So it's the same thing on TV, to be honest with you, is I know that if there's a role that comes down the pike that's the bad guy of the week, who's a white guy, 35, who's can't be trusted, I'm going to get that role. So I go, or I'm going to come close at least. So I tell my agent, I'm like, look for those roles, because it comes back to the working actor thing where I go, I know what I can do. I know what I get booked as. So look for these roles and I'll work as those. That's not to say I can't do other things. I have done them, but they are fewer and further between because I just book what I book. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes I'll be like, I could do that voice. But they don't even consider me for it because when they think of me, they think of this guy. So another long answer to your question, but to break into it, you got to be lucky and you got to know what you're good at. And, another example is I have a lot of friends who I've been directing, women in the business who are great at playing like 4 to 12-year-old boys. Like really good at playing those realistic. And there's like 4 or 5 actresses that I know that's what they do. They do a bunch of other stuff too, but you want a 12-year-old boy, like a character who sounds like a 12-year-old boy, but they're going to show up on time and know their lines, or not know their lines, but read their lines properly and take direction, hire so-and-so. That so you find your niche, and once you find your niche, that'll get you working. And then once you're working, you could start branching out, and hopefully you won't be like kept in a vocal box like I feel like I am sometimes. But hey, I'm still working, so that's all right.
I mean, obviously, when you get this character to do the voice for, I'm presuming now the way characters are in games, developing that voice and developing that character, it's got to be quite similar to how you would, to a movie or a TV show. Is it the same way of developing that character?
You know what, Brian? It doesn't change for me. There's technical differences,
Mm.
but there's no performance difference in terms of what your character wants, what he's trying to get, and how he goes about trying to get it. That is the core of all the performances. If you're on stage or if you're on performance capture stage or in a video game or in an animated series, just like, what does he want? How does he get it? How does he try to get it? What's in his way? The classic actor stuff. It's classic because it's true. You're like, what does the penguin want out of this scene? What does the penguin want overall? Yes, that plays. But what does he want out of this scene? And you figure that out and you play that. Doesn't matter if you're doing it over a mic, if you're doing it in a full performance capture suit, or if you're actually doing it on a camera. You're just like, the only things that you concentrate on that may be slightly different with voiceover is like, no, it's the same thing as TV. It's just like with the penguin, I had him sound like he was a bit from New York. He's from the Bronx. Like he used to be a street guy and now he's a rich kind of guy. That's how I made the penguin. Like Batman. Like that's how I made him sound. Right. So I had to concentrate to make sure I got the accent right. But I would have to do that on TV or theater anyway. So aside from technical things like don't pop the mic, like there's a little trick with a pencil. If you have a lot of P's, something you can put a pencil in front of your lip and it'll spread the air enough so the doesn't pop the mic, little things like that. Those things are different given the medium. But in terms of performance and where you're coming from, it should be, if you're doing it right, exactly the same thing.
I think during the pandemic, I think every man and his dog thought that they could try and turn their hands to vocal work because obviously they can, if you've got a good mic and a good soundproofed room or box, you could potentially do it. But listening to that is a hell of a lot more technical than just grabbing a mic and have
Oh
a
yeah.
decent voice.
If you're thinking technical stuff, there are, just the other day I was directing an actor who has done nothing but television in a video game. He's a really good actor, and he had a lot of trouble. And the trouble was the fact that he didn't know how to get his performance to the proper level of intensity, energy, but just do it with a mic.
Mm.
So that again, but that more is technical than an actor preparing for his scene. The technical aspect, like energy, is very important when it comes to vocal work and finding the right energy. Like if you're too laid back, it's just going to come off really. And even if the character is laid back, you still have to find a way to have an energetic version of laid back, but not energetic. But so those things you learn, right? And if you have a good director, you can probably find that happy place. But that again is all technical stuff.
Mm. It's got to be awesome. It's got to be lonely at times, I presume, because you're stuck in this box with your scripts. I mean, do you ever share a room with other actors when you're recording?
It used to be that way.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come back, but my first season of Blood of Zeus, which I love that show. I love the writing on that show and the character I get to play. My first season of that, we had about 4 or 5 of us in the room at the same time. I remember 4 of us in the room at the same time, and they would try to get us together when we're doing the scenes together. But in this second season, I had really important scenes, and because of the COVID protocols, we were just doing it from our booths. And it would be it got really frustrating because I would say something like, do we have the way she said it? Because the way she says this is going to change the way I would say this next line. And then they're like, oh, we don't have that. All right. Well, look, I have to give you like three versions because it depends on how she says this,
Mm.
how I'm going to react to it, and things like that. So I would much rather be with a bunch of actors than stuck lonely in a booth. But these past 2 years, 3 years, it's all been alone.
Well, I suppose when you're in a room with other people, I suppose you can bounce off them a bit more in the way of the dialogue and everything like that, and feel the energy. You know what? I'm looking at time, so I'm going to quickly move on. I know that you probably can't talk much about Star Trek Discovery. I know your NDA is probably tight as out, but this is your character on Star Trek
Yeah.
Discovery for next year. I wanted to just touch on the fact that how amazing you look in this picture. You did put on social media the fact that you had to sit for 4 hours for like 3 months, 4 hours a day for three months.
Yeah.
When you're
4 months. Yeah.
sat
4 months.
having this amazing makeup done, what do you do for those 4 hours? I mean, how do you occupy yourself for that time?
It's funny. It's like a lot of people are like, well, that's really torture, but it is. It's really annoying. But for me, I always feel like I'm not the one. I get up at 2:30 in the morning and I get to set, but then I just plop down in the chair and I could fall asleep. I could listen. I'm just listening to music or I'm reading my lines, or a lot of times I'll just fall asleep. But the guys who are making the makeup, the artists, they're working from 2:30 in the morning until we're done every day. So I always feel bad for them. It's not really me. I'm just like sleeping. Sometimes it's frustrating. It's like it takes a long time to get on. It takes like 40 minutes to get off. You have to do it every day, and then in between you're working 12 hours and wearing this thing all day. But here's the thing, man. Doug Jones, you know who Doug Jones is?
Yeah, he's been on the
Plays
show.
Saru, and oh, great. Yes, Doug's amazing, right? A great, amazing guy. Uh, I consider him a friend of mine. I call him for advice all the time. Um, Wonderful man. He is exhausted, never complains. So I'm not going to complain. If Doug's not complaining, the guy who's coming on for one season is not complaining. It was very difficult. Would I do it again? They'd have to up my pay a little bit because they paid me fine, but it you realize like a month in where you're like, this is really really hard. Uh, it's really hard. Yeah, I can't show these pictures yet, but there's like pictures that I took of myself like tearing it off at the end of the day, which the makeup people hated because like, hurt your skin, don't do that. But but there was like I've been wearing this 15 hours. I got the walk to the trailer is 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes, I'm tearing it off my face. And then the contact lenses were really. Can you see the contact? Yeah, the
Yeah.
contact lenses were really really hard to wear. Those were almost worse because they're big and they like sit on your eyes all day and your eyes start burning. So it was really hard. I sound like I'm complaining, but it was very hard. But in the end, I get to be a badass villain on Star Trek. But like I said earlier, he's got layers, and when you get into his when you get into his like uh, why he's doing what he's doing and his background and what race he is and all that kind of stuff, it's just really really cool stuff. And it's trust me, I've been hard on Star Trek Discovery too, and I know a lot of fans are. Um, but they really went back to their like adventure Star Trek roots with this season,
Mm.
and it's really a really fun, like, cool, fun sci-fi esque season. It's really cool, and
And
I got to
and
you know
and I can't believe we've got to
do
wait till
that stuff.
next year for it. We've got to wait till next year.
Yeah, but what's crazy? It's June already,
I know.
so it's like
You
it
know
sounds like
what? I
next year,
know.
but now it's like it's only 6 months.
I know. 6 months
It's not
till
that long.
Christmas until I can
I
start
know.
telling my little girls that they've got to behave, or Santa Claus won't bring any presents. Uh,
That threat's gone for me.
I know. I know. Well, one of my girls 9, nearly 10, and I've got a 5-year-old that's
Oh,
nearly
it's about to go
6.
away.
So literally, yeah, she's sort of twigging on. She's quite intelligent, bless her. Have you liberated any props or costume pieces from any of your projects that you've been on?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I try to liberate as much as I can. Um, the Star Trek I haven't. I got somebody sneaking around as they're like, because it's the last season, right? So they're starting to
Yeah.
strike the set. So I got somebody up there in Toronto, and I'm like, grab me my phaser if you can. I don't know if they'll be able to do it, but I'm gonna see if they can. And yeah, I've tried to take things, but you know what's really cool when you play a good role on a show, they usually send you cool shit. Like Discovery sent me this great like duffel bag with the Starfleet insignia on it, which is really cool. The Expanse sent me shirts and do I have it close by? No, but they sent me this amazing like vodka bottle with the Expanse written on it. So cool. So I keep that kind of stuff from the set. I'll try to steal, but you know what I steal a lot of? Socks. So many socks. Every day they give you socks to wear, and every day I forget to give them back. So by the end of like a shoot, I'm like, wow, I have like 30 pairs of socks.
We always need socks. They always disappear. They really do. So I don't know where all my socks go. So that sounds like a good deal. I wanted to move on to Cool Waters Productions and conventions because Derek Mackey is repping you with his company, which Derek is an awesome guy. He really is. And I'm looking forward to potentially getting you over to the UK. I mean, have you been over to the UK for a convention before?
I have. I've been to 2 Comic-Cons. I've been to the MCM at London and Manchester. Both times I had a really good time. I love London because, I love Shakespeare and I love the history of it. So one of my favorite things is to ask. I always kind of ask a Comic-Con, like, could you just bring me like 2 days early? Like, or a day early, just so I can just go. Like, I think I'm going to Greece at the end of the year. And I was just like, bring me a week early. And I'll pay for the hotel in the meantime, but fly me there a week early so I can just look at the city. It's a great thing about Comic-Cons. Manchester had like just such good food. That's what I remember about Manchester. Like we would just go around to like these Indian restaurants and these amazing restaurants in Manchester. Me and Victoria Atkins, who's in Assassin's Creed, she took me to all these like fancy restaurants. And Paul Amos, who's another Brit. I would love to come back to the UK. I love it. So it's a longer trip now for me living in LA than when I lived in Toronto. It's an extra 6 hours, but I'll do it. Yeah, no, I'd love to come back to the UK. Yeah, Derek and I only hooked up beginning of the year because he reps Doug, and so Doug asked him to meet me, and then when we met, he said, "Yeah, once Star Trek comes out, he'll start pushing me for all that stuff, and then hopefully, man, I'd love to come to the UK.
Oh no, it'll be great. I mean, conventions like Monopoly events, which are a great organizer. They've just got Jensen Ackles, that was also in Smallville as well as you was, as well back in the day.
Jensen was on Supernatural. I worked with Jensen on Supernatural.
Yes, of course. Yes. See, this is the thing. Your IMDb, literally, I could just throw a dart onto a show, and you've been in it, or you've got involvement in it.
And you know what's so funny? It's really, there's like so many. Well, I mean, I'm older, right? I'm like, I know I don't look, in my 40s, but I'm in my 40s, so I still play like 32 to 35. But I've had this extra 10 years of life where that just builds your resume. It's just. So I'll keep milking the baby face for as long as I can.
You know what? You have got a baby face because I was looking at your age, and believe it or not, I'm actually younger than you. So either I've got to move to LA, or I've got to just get an easier paper round because I started to go grey when I was 21. But no, Elias, you've been a great guest. It's been such an honor to have you on the show, and I'd love to invite you back on the show when Star Trek Discovery comes out, so we can dig deep into your character. But no, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much. Keep safe and stay super, my friend.